This is an American Lock 1100 model, and I'm going to be walking through how to disassemble, gut the lock, and reassemble it. In my first video where I picked it, it was a pretty messy video. I didn't have all the tools that I needed, and it seems like people have a lot of questions about part of these process, so I'm going to try and walk through going through the process here. So we'll start with unscrewing the screw that sits under the shackle here. And as you do that, the other side of it, oh, there we go. Sorry, dropped that. The other side of it here comes loose at the same time. I'll just put those off to the side. Those will be the last steps we do when we reassemble it. Then we have our cover here as well. And once we have that, this is just sitting loosely in here, and we can just drop that out. If you just bought this might be pretty slimy and greasy. I've wiped mine down just because I've been gutting this a lot, and I don't care for that. The last piece that's in here that some people don't catch, there is on the newer ones, or more new ones, there's this extra piece here that's a bypass block that they've added in because a bypass was found for this lock. So we'll just take that out and set it aside. Now that we've got our core out, the next thing that we have to do is take off this C-clip here that's at the back. I just got this Sparrow's gut wrench. It came in today before I was using an obnoxious set of wrenches. I'm just gonna twist the core a little bit. When I take this out, I want this thicker part to go along the driver pins so that they don't drop out early down to here. I'm gonna shim it, but I wanna do this just in case. So I'm gonna take this and put it on the open part of the clip here. Get it into place, and then it just pushes it a little bit off. There we go, and I can kind of, oh, it went back on. There we go. It's a bit hard for me to see this while I'm recording it. There we go. Oh, didn't stick. And then I can just reach in on the other side of here, take this C-clip off, and careful when you take this off. If you're not on the other side of it, it can fly off and you might lose track of it. And finally, I'm going to put a shim into here. So I just ordered these off of Sparrows just for me because I live in Canada. It's very accessible for me to order from them. And then AAA battery you can use as a follower here. Doesn't need to be anything fancy, or if you have other followers, that's fine. And as I work along this, sometimes the shim is gonna wanna come with it. So I'm just gonna kind of hold that in place and work it back like that, and just making sure we're not losing the shim along the process. And make sure as you're pulling this out, you want these key pins facing up, or as you drag it out, they're going to fall out and you're going to possibly lose track of the order that they need to go in here. So this is all set. We're good here. I'm just going to set this down while we take the key pins out. I kept the key in just as a personal preference, I guess. I like to have that control over it. But as you take the key out, you're going to notice these pins are going to want to pop up on you as you're pulling this out. So I like to cover it lightly with my thumb, just take the key out, and they're all still in place here. So one at a time, I'm going to cover them with my thumb and drop the pins out. So there's our first pin. I'm just going to put them in order along here. There's our second pin. Third. Fourth, and fifth. And if you lose track of these, if they do fall out in a different order, it's not the end of the world. You can put the key back in here, and when you place the pins in, they should be perfectly flush here if the key is in. So if they're raised or lowered, then you know it's not in the right slot, and you can kind of do that puzzle to figure out where they go. Set this aside. Next, we're going to be going through here. I'm just going to take the shim out. We don't necessarily need it while we push this back. And what you want to do, I like to start at the front, and we're just going to take our tweezers and push this back so that as these pins pop up, our tweezers are actually blocking them from flying away anywhere. So there's our first. I'm just going to put them in line with the pins so I know where they go. Number 2. Number 3. And with this lock and a lot of locks, it doesn't actually matter if these stay in the right order. You'll notice on here, these are all the same size. So I could switch these around and play with that, and it would still lock and unlock just fine with the key. So there's all 5. And last thing to do here for the gutting is take out the springs. I just kind of put a finger over one side and just dump them out. For this lock, they're all the same. Some locks will have different springs in different slots, so you'll want to be more careful with that, but for this lock it does not matter. So just for the sake of the gutting, I'm just going to put these, oh my gosh, these are not real pinning tweezers. I've made these myself. These are, I've used a file and kind of put a groove into these so they could grab the pins. Anyways, this is the lock here, fully gutted. I'll see if I can zoom in on those key pins at all. Get a little bit better of a look at them. And next we'll go back to putting this back together. So basically we're going to do everything we just did, but in the opposite order. So a good indication for here, something to keep an eye on, you can see this notch right here. This means that this is the front. So this will go and become flush with this part of the core. When this slides into here, that's how you know that this is the front. So we'll start with the springs. And it does not matter what order you want to put things back into here, whatever you feel comfortable with, as long as they go in and they go in the order that you care about. I'm going front to back here. Oh, dropped it through. So that was number 3. Sorry, you don't get a great view of this. Number 4. And number 5. This part can get a little bit tricky. We're going to put the driver pins on top of the springs, and we just set it down. You can see it's floating above the shear line there. That's okay. This is where shims are going to come in really handy when you're putting it back together. The first time I did this, I did it without shims, and oh, we're already getting that. Things kind of went all over the place because when I was trying to, oh, we lost all of them. We'll try it again. Things went all over the place because I had a hard time getting the core back in and keeping the driver pins down. And with a shim, you can just kind of lay it down and put the plug back through it, and it'll push them all down nicely. This is where real pinning tweezers make a big difference. These are just twisting a little bit as I put them in. Oh, see right there, it's twisting as I try and drop it. So there's 4, and number 5 goes back there. This has 6, oh, I missed. Oh no, we just dropped out number 4. 6 slots, and we're only using 5 of them, so just keep an eye out and make sure you're not accidentally dropping stuff into that 6th slot there. Okay, so everything's in here. Next, I'm just going to put this shim down. and take my follower and just trying to keep that shim in place. There we go. So that's ready to go. We can put the core back in once we get the key pins in place. So starting from the front, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And if you want to make sure that you've put them in the right order, like I said, you can put the key in again. Careful that the pins don't fly out, just cover it up. And these are all perfectly flush on here. That's the right order. Next is putting the core back in. So I'm just gonna set this down. I'll actually take the key out. Just gonna set this down. And so we need the core to go in this side because this has the notch in it. So I'm gonna try and get this lined up here, ready to go. I'm actually gonna put my shim back through here again because we wanna go under the shim as we follow it through. I like to personally. You don't necessarily have to, you can get away without doing that, but it's safer. So we've got our shim in place and we're just gonna take the back of the core here and just push right. Give it a little bit of a twist. So we're lined up flush here. And there we go. I'll put the key in again and just get it lined up. If you're not lined up, the key won't go all the way in. And I took the shim out and you heard everything click into place. And there we go. Can verify that our key turns. And the next step is to put this C-clip back on. So there's a little ridge here, that's where you took it off of. This very low one clicks on just like that. And before we put this back in here, we're gonna wanna put this shield back on. So this just sits nice and flush on there, super simple. And then you can see where the core locks into place there. So we just pop that in. And I'm gonna need to take the key out though. Rookie mistake. All right, and then we can put cover back on. This goes on the bottom. Screw goes back in. Make sure you keep your finger on this guy down here when you flip it over. Screwdriver. Back in. I will say one time I had my threading get messed up on here and the screw really wanted to go in sideways and I just had to power through it, kind of rethread it, and it's still good. Locks. Unlocks. Good to go.